Welcome to the Heritage Village Historical Clothing, Fiber Arts, Textile Weekend. They'll have workshops demonstrating and lectures about clothing and military uniforms, history and technologies of fiber arts, weaving, spinning, sewing, hands-on activities, use of plants, textiles, and dyes. They just opened up. We're going to head on over and see what they have. Let's head on into Heritage Village, look around, see what they have going on. Oh, it's quiet. They must be in the other area. Wow, Leah's moved all this stuff. It's like they cleared the place out. I'm sure they took it all over to the Kircher building, which we will head to in just a second. Have some of the games out from last month, where the kids were playing the little games out there. Well, not just the kids, but let's do a little peek around the Gebhardt Tavern for just a moment, since we're here. It's quiet. Currently, it's open the first weekend of the month. They have events going on. The first weekend of the month, May through October, I believe. You can come here and examine all the artifacts yourselves and read about them. They have little placards or ID on most every item. So they've moved quite a few things, probably over to there. I'm quite sure they're in the Heritage Village. The Kircher building. So when I was talking about the maps, you can see some of the original 90 plots right here. I was talking about on the, let's see if we can't block somehow. Trying to block some of the extra lights to get a feel. Maybe not. What is this? No, this is definitely not that map. Or is it? No, there's a lot more areas here. It's an early map. 1818. Okay. Let's head up. See what they've moved here. Hear the train across the river in Miamisburg. You always hear trains in Miamisburg. The poor mannequin has been stripped of her clothing. It's probably over on the other side. Just a little cursory overview of here. Come on down and check everything out yourself. We'll be heading over there in just a moment. All right, let's head down. They don't even know I'm here. Hello.
It also has a full basement of cellar area, which was also pretty, and that was actually also pretty rare for the time. And the tavern keeper would roll the barrels of whiskey and wine into the cellar, so that's where it was stored. It's very cool, sure. And then it became, as you know, became a house. So I know you're directly related to the Gebhardts, you said?
We are.
Gebhardt family? Okay.
On one side or the other.
And the Eagles, I know, are another family,
Yeah.
Eagle family. Okay. Wonderful. So, and this is actually not the original location. This was moved. Yeah.
This way so we have more walkabout
Smart.
space.
Smart.
Do you want to take the other
Yeah.
end? I can tell when cameras are recording. And it will affect how freely I speak.
Not really. You did well. You did real well.
That was fun though.
But this is a minor. It's like there's nothing to see here. Not perfect.
This can go in the middle.
Okay, so apparently they've changed. They're bringing some stuff back over here. They said Lee was taking way too much room with his stuff and they needed room to operate.
That's not what happened.
That may or may not be true. But for now, that's what we're going to go with.
But, oh yeah, I like this. Don't you like this?
Yes. I liked when I got here and it was dead, nobody here, and stuff cleared out, and I'm like, huh. Well, no.
The stuff we wind up with over here is going to be stuff that came from my house, probably. And that was going to allow me to talk about how textiles that are being used in clothing is changing.
Oh, I know you got an industrious program today, is what I was reading.
1780s. I'm missing one. Where's my 18? There it is. 1780s, 1811, 1850. See?
Look at you go. We are not stuck in one part this time.
Now, because this weekend is about fiber and textiles.
I know.
It's not about just one era.
Not the Civil War. Yeah.
I guess my mug will hold.
I saw Wanda wasn't here. She's off on vacation maybe now.
Yes, she is headed back to her family's farm, actually.
Oh, okay.
This where she does all of that amazing cooking.
So it's here. Did you just hang this or was it already here?
This, I don't know if Lee must have just put it up.
He must have just, I didn't notice it with my walkthrough. My silent.
Your silent
my silent post-rapture walkthrough. I'm like,
This is examples of the different kinds of fabrics.
Yeah, it's
I don't
just
think
their
that's,
day to
I
day.
think this
It's
might,
amazing.
I just wanted to give an idea of what
Can
towns
you
would
get
get
this?
this. This came from Scrap It Up,
Yeah.
and I assumed that at the end of the day, this
we're
is
getting back info of where it comes from.
That's what this is.
Started 3 more.
This is here so that I can talk about what the quilting weight of cotton is versus other weights of cotton, and then also so that you can swipe it at the end. Is that reasonable? That's reasonable.
But I'm from Dayton.
Because we are talking about all the different kinds of textiles that are being made into clothing. I'm focusing on ladies' clothing because that's this is a draft of what I hope to be a more thorough poster in the future, but it's just a rough start of it. Because there are 4 fibers that you're generally working with. And if you come way back when the area is first being settled, in the 1780s, and you see what we think of more as 1700s types clothing, you have the same, throughout the whole time, it's the same 4 most basic fibers. But because technology is different, and fashion is different, the fibers that are in fashion and the things people are wearing are different. So early settlers have wool, linen, cotton, and silk. Mostly they're going to wear wool and linen. And when we say wool, we think of blankets and uniforms, but there are lightweight, dress weight wools. As a matter of fact, there's one in my car that's even lighter than this. That's a cotton. This would be a really nice dress weight. Feel how that's not, doesn't that feel soft?
That's
And
not military grade.
No, this feels, and also they did have colors. I know we forget that, but just because you couldn't photograph a color doesn't mean they didn't have it. As well as heavier wools, and you can use heavier wools for outer garments, but you can make yourself a nice petticoat out of a thin wool. Linen and wool can be, this is linen, and these are linen pieces. Linen can be processed at home, wool can be processed at home. There are mills for things, but not so much in the United States. The Industrial Revolution has already kicked off in England, so there are mills, but you still have home production for cottons and linens, for wools and linens. Now, cottons are another story because the cotton that's being grown in the colonies is all being sent to England, and that is going to their factories. The cotton in the 1700s is still considered an expensive fabric. The best stuff are muslins from India, and then England said, well, we can maybe copy those on in our factories, and there's a more affordable version. But you're still using cotton, not for your everyday stuff, because that's going to be up there with your silks as far as something nice to make. Now, silks are going to be taffeta weights. They're going to be a little stiffer. They give you a nice rustle, and your skirts stand out a little bit, and you got a little body with it. They're not the light, flowy silks that we use for modern stuff today. Then we jump to when the tavern is built. 1811. 1811, you're wearing the kind of outfits that I have on. The outfits are flowy, so your fabrics are going to be flowy. You're still working with linens, wools, cottons, and silks. And linens are still a good working, you can still process at home. Wools you can process at home, but by 1811 there's wool mills right around here in Cincinnati. You can bring your fleece to the mill. It's so much nicer. You can weave a nice, even wool fabric. And so now, in 1811, your wools are still perfectly good working class fabrics, but also for something that'll hold body, something for upper class too. Linens are still perfectly good working class fabrics that you're going to make at home. Then you get to cotton. Cotton by 1811 is starting to be a little more common. It's still kind of a nicer fabric, but ladies want to wear something flowy. This is a flowy 100% cotton. It's not stiff like we think of a quilted cotton. They do have, in England, not in the United States, they do have ways to print on cotton, and you can start to get printed cotton, but it's still kind of a nicer fabric. Until you get, last time we were in this building, it was about the 1850s or 60s. By now, we have a lot of our own factories. Cotton is very affordable. By now, you're not using linen that much at all. By now, there's lots of woolen mills, and so you're going to buy your fabric at the mercantile. You're not making it at home. When you start making things at home, sometimes folks will point to a time in the 1770s and they'll point to a time in the 1860s when people are making homespun. They are not making homespun because the technology isn't there or because they live in the boonies and they can't buy stuff at the mercantile. They absolutely have plenty of distribution for these manufactured goods. In those two times, what was happening in 1770s? There was this like war, tea went into the haba, all that happened. In the 1860s, same kind of thing happened. All of that cotton that was being grown was being shipped to either England or the north into the factories, and it was being manufactured there. So they could buy manufactured cotton like this. This would be good for 1860s manufactured cotton. But they didn't want to. They wanted to declare their independence from it. So in the 1770s, ladies decided to relearn how to spin. Not that everybody had forgotten, not that grandma didn't still know how to spin, not that you might not spin out in the middle of nowhere, but most ladies didn't have to at that point in the 1770s. They would have spinning bees, and you can actually find articles in the newspaper advertising spinning bees. This is how we know. We don't have to make this up. Same thing happened again in the 1860s. In the South, they said, we're going to make homespun. This is a homespun weave. That's just because it's soft and comfortable. This is a cotton homespun. Because they said, how about if we see if we can not have to use those northern factories, and let's be patriotic and not wear that. Some ladies were very unhappy about doing this because they really liked their nice factory-produced cottons, and they really wanted some of that nice factory-produced silk. They really wanted it. I mean, they craved it. It's a nice rustle. That taffeta silk in a ball is delightful. They didn't want to be homespun, but they would even host an occasional calico ball. So that means calico could be any silk back then. Now it's just something printed. But and the idea was both North and South. We can be patriotic. We don't need to get foreign silks. We can have a ball with all of our cotton, everyday fabric that we have available. So that's a little walk through the different fabrics of the time. This is an example, it's just an undergarment of the kind of silk, not the lining, the kind of silk weight that we're used to today, right? This really soft, flowy stuff, and how that's very different from this stiffer taffeta that rustles a little bit. You can hear it, which is really nice. That's the overview. You want to know about how these fabrics are woven, then you're going to talk to our resident weaver who's in the other building. I just wanted to give an overview about when these fabrics that he's weaving get used and how they get made into different styles, the manufacturing changes.
All right, we appreciate it, Dana. Can you tell the people your name and what got you into this and what you're doing now?
And when I have to be brief? Okay.
No, you don't have to be brief. You may be as verbose as you feel.
I will be. My name is Dana. I've driven up from Cincinnati because the Miamisburg Historical Society has been incredibly hospitable and welcoming to visitors to come up and be in their wonderful heritage village here by the canal. And I have been doing living history for more than 20 years, and I've always thought it was interesting because I grew up in Massachusetts, and we have living history all over the place and historical buildings all over the place, and I always said, how do you get to be those people? So now I'm those people.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. You know, it's...
So actually, here's something that you will get a kick out of then, because you've been doing things upstairs. Let me get this into working mode, I think. How did it... You know, when you start with one, you have to figure out where you left off.
Oh.
You know how that goes. Yeah, maybe like that. Okay, that might be wrong. I'll figure that out.
We're getting ready to learn something about something.
Yeah, I'm going to bring out a couple so you can see that this is different. Including this one that came to me from Lithuania. This looks like the one upstairs in the actual collection.
And what are these again?
They're called a lucet.
Lucet.
L-U-C-E-T.
Okay.
And you use it to make cording. And
there we go.
Usually you would use it with finer stuff than this thick stuff thick yarn that I'm using. But this I was practicing, so I didn't want to use up anything finer. I wanted to be able to see it also.
And it shows
And
us.
you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see what it's doing. And if you use this finer stuff when you're making it, you can use it to make stays lacing. It makes a nice strong stays lacing.
Stays is what?
Stays are, before you started calling the thing that kept everything organized in the 1860s, as we watched last time, a corset. And stays are what you call it before a corset. They didn't call it a corset until the middle of the late 1840s. I mean, it starts transitioning in. Before that, you would just have something that gives you enough support to wear the clothing. Again, they don't make you pass out unless you're in a movie. Apparently. And so you have the full size stays that you have in the 1700s that you can kind of picture in movies. And then in Regency, it's just a very light amount of support because you don't need to put anything around your waist because there's no restriction there. Why would you put something there? Looking at you, certain TV show.
And it also kept you upright as you worked. Not the stays so much, but the boning.
They
and the
actually,
corsets.
so for Regency, they pretty much just give you shape,
Yeah.
but they do give you some nice shoulder support
Yes.
for moving things around and working. I wore this exact outfit last weekend at another historic site to do a bunch of cooking, and I was hauling firewood all weekend and cast iron Dutch ovens around
Yeah.
and things like that. And even though I didn't have support here, which I would have in my other stays,
Right.
either 1700s or 1860s. But I did have that little bit of support on my shoulders, which is kind of nice, actually. If they fit you, they're not bad. And all this does is you just keep lifting the bottom loop over the top, and then turning and lifting the bottom loop over the top, and then turning. And let's see, pull this a little bit, and then turning, and tighten, pull this a little bit, and turning, flip it, tighten a little bit, and this is a loose end. Flip it around,
Okay.
pull it a little bit.
So
flip
cordage
it.
for all different sizes.
So yeah, anything you need cording for. Nice. Which is,
Okay.
all kinds of things. Pull it a little bit, turn it, and it's just going to keep going until I
Okay.
run out of yarn, because this is just a practice one.
All
It
right.
has no purpose in life.
Well, we learned something else from Dana. Appreciate it.
And they can have handles like this, but they don't have to have handles like this. And the one upstairs does not. There is one in the museum collection in the tavern on the second floor, and so now let that be a scavenger hunt for whoever sees this, is look for the lucette on the second floor of the tavern.
Okay. We recorded upstairs. Maybe it's in
You'll
there.
have to see if it's in your footage. The one we bought at Heritage. So this is what Heritage Village. Other Heritage Village. You don't need to record this. This is
No, you never know. I know how you roll. You have interesting facts spew out of yourself.
Well, I'll just say that sometimes you'll find these as a kit at a historic site, so keep your eyes open.
Oh,
They'll be
okay.
Bundled like this with a little sample yarn and a handy little thing with directions.
I have seen them before.
Yeah, so you'll see this at a lot of historic
I didn't really
sites.
concentrate. I've just noticed them because it's that and
Just because who
not
doesn't-
really my forte, but
Well, who doesn't want to look at gift shops, right? So it's fun, and actually maybe, and then you can make them. Someone made these. I have a few of these, and then someone in Lithuania made this one because I wanted one without a handle.
how come?
Variety to try it, to see what it feels like to turn in your hand, to see if you like it. This one is
Okay.
made out of
Tactile
bone.
enjoyment.
Yeah, I like this one. It's soft, it's smooth, it's made out of bone. Something about lucettes that's interesting to me is that you can date them back to Vikings. People have been making cords out of lucettes, something with two pokes, two sticks like that, like a fork, and some people call it a lucette fork. And you can make one out of a actual fork by taking the middle two tines down and leaving the other two up. As long as you have a place to wrap one and turn
Okay.
it and wrap one. Okay.
And this is why I keep the recording going.
Yeah, which
So,
had a different
what are
name
those?
before.
It's had other names. So it's called English paper piecing, and you take the piece of paper and you wrap.
Oh,
a
that's
piece of fabric
paper.
around it and well,
Yeah.
it's paper on the inside.
No, I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's actual paper
So
there.
this little white piece in there, not in there.
Yeah.
And so when she's cutting it, she's got to take her little It's quilting fabric, just like this green stuff I have.
Oh, this is the backing
Yeah,
of
that's
it.
the back.
So,
And that way each one will be absolutely perfectly the right size because it's literally pressed around the piece of paper.
very nice, very nice.
Oh, you have this. There we go. Doop. Like that.
Oh, okay, cool.
Like that.
This is
English
not
paper piecing.
nice. It's not from Dana, but a surprise guest that will remain off camera. She's blocked behind my hand. She's a Cincinnati person. We will keep it. You must find out who she is.
Papers they get pressed around
Do you like
there,
that?
and then they get hand
Give me a
stitched
secret.
together. That's a pretty fabric. Look at that little small chintz. That would be a nice. How come there isn't an 18th century 18th inch doll dress on it?
Yeah, well, small pieces like that. I don't have.
She has some other cool looking stuff here too.
This is,
You may see her hands. What do you have here?
So this is called whole cloth, and this is just a small example of a way that they would have quilted with whole pieces of fabric. That's what's called whole cloth.
Okay.
Versus pieces of fabric that they might have pieced together into a bigger quilt.
Now, see that plenty from like my older
And
family
this
members.
is applique.
The fabric
So you make a
Applique.
design.
What's that mean?
Applique is where you take the fabric and you stitch it onto a bigger piece of fabric and make a design.
Oh, and that's called applique.
Applique.
Okay, well, that's very nice. We already saw your paper.
This is the paper piecing, and so they would just reuse old paper, letters, correspondence, newspapers. You can find that in existing quilts from the time period that still have the paper in them.
Yes.
I take the paper out and I reuse the paper.
Exactly.
Oh,
Take the
okay.
paper out and reuse it, and sometimes people don't. If it's just going to be for decor, you can applique these onto things. This is a modern example where someone put a quilt square onto a bag.
Yes.
Okay, that's very nice. That's a very cool. Yeah, that's fancy.
This one behind me is a vintage top, and I brought that one so that you could see the hand stitches, that this was done entirely by hand, this entire quilt top.
I've seen this before with, once again, family members, older family members.
Yeah, totally hand stitched. And these are hand stitched.
So this
These
and
pieces
those
are-
I've seen. These I've seen around, but I didn't really think about it.
It was really common in like the 60s and 70s.
That's
to make
probably
the
why I saw it
flowers,
around.
Yeah, and they would call it grandmother's flower garden.
Like, what can I work
Oh,
on?
Because they
okay.
look like flowers.
I'm teaching myself how
But there
to
are other
darning.
shapes, diamonds, and other
yeah,
shapes you can do paper piecing with.
So,
Okay.
And English paper piecing is different than foundation paper piecing.
Okay. And they said you work at a Heritage Village down
No,
in
I
Cincinnati?
don't work there. I
Oh, volunteer. When I said that, that's what I
Yes,
meant,
yeah.
because this is what.
It is work sometimes.
So volunteer at, where at in Cincinnati?
It's the Heritage Village Museum that's in Sharonville.
Sharonville. Now you may go find a mystery guest. So this is a big piece you rescued from the antique mall? Is that the
I forget
one?
which one. No.
Oh, there's lots of them, aren't
Dana
there?
Dana would know.
Is it the big giant one?
It is a big giant one, but it's not the one on Route 4 in Fairfield. It's
No, I was thinking like out off the interstate or
with this
Spring.
nice
Oh,
color on color stripe.
Dana.
they are.
Name,
There's some
but,
something.
What's the name?
Antique mall that we went to with the. We went to the trade show first.
Oh,
and
or
is
the-
it Heart of Ohio?
That's the big one. See, I knew. I was thinking, was it that super big one?
Yeah, it's a
giant
super big
wings?
one.
I think it was Heart of Ohio.
Okay, that's the one I was thinking about. It's a massive one.
But this one is just amazing. The curves, it's
Shopping,
perfect. The
gotta
whole
know
thing
what
is
you're gonna-
perfect,
you
but it
gotta
was
know ahead of time what's
entirely
correct because
hand
there
stitched.
is like mountain man type stuff.
They just never
But
finished
also,
it.
oh, you
Yeah.
have that now? Okay.
Well, it's finished enough.
It will be one day. I'm gonna.
Oh, you're going to
Yeah.
finish it.
I
Gotcha.
rescued it. I'm gonna
Let's
finish it.
put it.
Oh, they're
along
bringing
the front
benches
of this,
over from the other side.
um,
Probably where Lee must still be setting up. We will go see him in a little bit. All right, thank you. Oh, one more thing. What was your name?
Heather.
Heather. There you go. You know where to find her. Good luck.
All right. The imperial
We just saw this. She pulled out some other stuff. You called them postage stamps?
Yeah, they're the size of a postage stamp. They're
They
1 inch
are.
square each
Or
piece.
maybe that one just uses, and then there's the
And each
warm
piece is
ones, like
different,
Bishop,
and eventually it'll be one
which
big
is only called Smoky
quilt
Bishop
top.
because he was describing
Nice.
the warm steam.
I know. I thought we'd saw all your stuff. Next thing I know, I saw these little colors and stuff hitting it.
And there's another little
It's like
tiny
a little
No, this is
catalog of
cool
all
to
the
me.
fabrics I've used, and friends
Oh.
have given me pieces from their project.
That is neat then. See, so that has meaning. It's just not just a bunch of random. These are
And then
stuff that you've had and certain ones given. And, oh, very nice.
I have a lot of friends who also quilt, so.
She has had quite a bit. Look at this. It does not stop.
We were
Oh, my
literally
goodness.
saying, hey, we could stick a bench back here and it wouldn't mean the chairs could be up.
Okay, but they all have meaning, so that makes it even. That makes
You
it
guys should
cool.
show us.
Oh,
So if you have
look
a
at
lot of
that.
people in here, people could
It's
be
cool.
sitting down. If you had people all sitting here and singing along with some
right.
musicians on a particular song, but that's part of
Dana's talking about darning, I think, because it matches her name, but I'm not sure.
That's definitely why. And my 18th century box loom is still in the car. The stuff, they're all open and exposed, and everyone is clearly going to die of pneumonia. That was his professional opinion from Dr. Daniel Drake in Cincinnati. Somehow we lived past that generation. By the 1850s and 60s, 1840s even. And these buildings are still here, and that one's getting built. I think that's 1840s. Now we have our own cotton industry. The cotton is still kept during the Revolutionary War, when the lady said, now, colonial ladies could buy their fabric. They did not have to homespun everything. You get this idea, friend who knows an awful lot about history and an awful lot about birds, and so whenever she can combine those two. So starlings, who are like the pest of the bird world, right? They're pretty, they can mimic, they're kind of a cool bird, but also they're like unstoppable, and and the murmurings, the whole things like that. So they are the squirrel of the bird world, right? Yeah.
Hey now, don't you talk down about squirrels.
Okay, but see, Margot loves starlings too, so we can give the starlings some love. It's not their fault that this guy, so there was this guy in New York in the 1800s, I want to say 1880s, but we can look it up, who said, you know what would be cool is if we imported to the United States, say Central Park for instance, every bird that is mentioned in Shakespeare. I'm going to go through my greatest works of Shakespeare, and I'm going to find every bird mentioned, and every single bird he brought over here died. He'd bring it over, it wouldn't make it through a winter at Central. Why it didn't occur to him to try like Virginia, but every single bird didn't make it, except he brought over so many pairs of starlings, and a large percentage of them made it through, and he got so excited he got more. And he brought over more starlings, and now starlings are, even early on it was in New York, and they would move into the barns, and they had no natural predators here, so they have gotten into airplane engine. They are an absolute, it's one of the few wild birds that you're allowed to catch because they don't care. They're
I feel like he wasn't married, or else his wife had other interests.
Yeah, right? Like, this is what you wanted? And there are lots of examples in the 1880s-ish, like of, we want a complete collection, we're going to plant every plant ever in our garden, and all that kind of stuff like that.
Collect all the ferns from Madagascar? Oh, yes.
Yeah, yes, yes, see, there's the thing. They were so into that, those Victorians, but also, really, the starlings, and you had to bring them back, and
They were not my friend. I lived in Holland and rode my bike to Germany each day, and they dive bomb me all the time.
Well,
just them.
They're not supposed to be here. And
No, this was in Europe. This was actually over in Europe, but
See,
still,
they're
they weren't my friends over there,
never
so
told
they're
you.
not no friends here either.
It's in. There's a line in Shakespeare, and someone trains the starling to repeat, because they can be trained to mimic if you get them like as a little chick, and all because of this one line. We're stuck with
Yes.
a complete scourge of starlings.
So were pigeons another one that made it? Or did they come to New York on their own?
The pigeons didn't come out of the Shakespeare experiment, so I don't know how they got there. We'll have to look that one up.
Actually, probably pigeon keepers.
Well, and people
did
like
eat it,
pigeons.
things.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they
They
kept
ate them. I've eaten it. It tastes good.
They make nice
It's
little
something you
reflector
can do
ovens
in
for
little
small
space and
birds.
let them forage. So yeah, I could see why they would be a New York City special.
That would be. Yeah, there's so many of the things.
So-
Looked at a lot.
We can't find any pictures with plaid.
Yeah, because plaid is a woven pattern, and if you're looking at cottons, those are mostly printed patterns, and cottons tended to want to mimic a block print. So you're going to find a small printed, even the ones that England was copying the block prints at their manufacturing factories, but they still wanted it to look like a block print. Like they wanted to look, that's what the hot stuff was. I mean, we buy printed plaids, but that's not a thing.
No.
You're gonna find plaid in a wool, and they didn't have all of the meanings because most of those got lost because they outlawed all of the tartans, and they didn't come back in style until Victoria made them fashionable. And then they just assigned all the designs to people's families. So when you buy a tartan for your family, that doesn't go back any farther than Victoria.
Right.
Doesn't go back to the 1600s.
I learned that when I investigated mine. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, buy whatever you want. If for 1700s, buy whatever you want. So you're not. I mean, I guess if you're gonna have if it's woven though, what are you wearing? You're wearing wools. Well, that's not.
Is it printed?
Maybe work clothing. That's what I'm.
Yeah, but it's gonna be
This
your
is-
linens.
yeah.
Your linens will be, but there won't be plaids. There'll be like this bar stuff, this like window pane type stuff.
Yeah.
So you see this
Yeah.
these right here as examples of what especially during the short period of time that Jane Austen stuff was going on. They were trying to look like the statues, the Greek statues
Right.
of the goddesses. That's why it's all white, and that's why you don't
And
have a lot
sheer.
of lace. A few years into
My
that,
18th century apron, so I have a linen
pastels.
sample.
Yeah.
I like it.
start doing the pastels.
And then my
Well, now that was a lot of information, a lot of fun from Dana, learning about textiles and all kinds of other subjects and other things that popped up. She had many friends or acquaintances that she knew that were here as well and talked about a few other things that we just listened to. But now we are finally going to make it over to the historic Kircher Pioneer Home, in which Lee will be working on the loom and tell us about some of that stuff. So let's go check them out. All right, let's head in.
There is an incredibly crazy theory that says this little tiny rail right there is what you're supposed to slide this along. And they're crazy, it doesn't.
Doesn't work.
Oh, switch, we're learning how to weave. Woo!
We're back with Lee, the master weaver.
In a new building.
Oh, I've heard the story. I've just spent the last 2 hours with Dana,
Yep, I
and
heard.
you are welcome because you are the one that have. No, I'm welcome because you're the one that introduced her to come here. A great asset. She literally brought 100% of the people over there was from her, except me. But I don't really count. The rest of the people were ones she knew. And got the backstory, how y'all met and
Well,
stuff.
I was responsible for this, but yes.
Oh yeah. Talk about moving over here. I like this. This is a good use.
Yeah.
So I arrived here. I go in there. There's absolutely no one in there
Very
at all.
disappointed, right?
No, there's nobody in there. I'm like, well, I missed the rapture. There's not a single soul here.
No, our clothes would have been on the floor.
So I went upstairs. The mannequin had no clothes, but it wasn't on the floor. I'm like, okay. I said, for some reason, they decided to move every single thing into the Heritage or to the Kircher building. That's what I was thinking because there wasn't
Yep.
she didn't have nothing set up there. And I'm like,
So we didn't have a lot of school programs in here.
no, they explained, what happened,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate.
And I had been pulling the ends tight,
Yeah.
which was causing it to come in a bunch and then
Oh.
get uneven.
Yeah.
But when I pull and then cross, it leaves it so that where I do the cross is closer to what the actual width is here. And that was something that I learned because I didn't know how to do it. And
Sure.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
very fun.
If I recall, he has at least this year to go before actually
We
get
should be
through
done
this.
by like 2035.
Okay,
Yes.
2035.
I think.
Then you can get a piece of this.
There's 20
The cost will be
yards.
about $20,000 with how everything's going with prices.
Well, you know what? Maybe not that bad. because there's 20 yards, and I bet we have like half a yard on here already. So.
Okay.
Beautiful. Wow.
But
Dana has already said that she's got the solution to make Lee work more. They're going to schedule many more events, so therefore he will actually come and do some
Love it,
stuff.
yeah. And last year we had no Saturdays. This year we're having a bunch.
This is the first ever that we've had. Well, they did it on an
Month ago.
ultra rare. No, I mean in the past.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They did an ultra rare that have an extra day, but this is the first year that they've had 2-day openings since the 90s. I don't know if that, well, probably forever, because I don't imagine they did it in the 80s
Right,
either.
yeah. What's that? You're supposed to turn the camera.
I know.
so
I knew exactly what she was doing. That's why I overemphasized and turned that way while I left the camera. Don't worry, that'll come off. We drink. That's right. Humans drink liquid. Most of y'all should know Lee by now, but this is, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Leah Torrey. I'm a resident here in Miamisburg, and I am a fiber junkie. So I got started with knitting, turned to spinning my own wool into yarn because I wanted the really nice stuff. Learned to crochet, picked up weaving on an inkle loom, which is this. This particular loom will do about 1.5 to 2 inch wide strap, 15 feet long. And it wasn't long doing that before I started playing with my first spinning wheel, and the addiction continued until I had a floor loom. And so most of what I have in here is my stuff that I brought. It was great to get it out of its dark little corner in the basement. And this, we are actually going to start working on the warp for this, which is the lengthwise threads, the length of the fabric we're going to make. We're going to put about 3 yards on here for someone to learn how to weave.
Nice,
And they're going to do
nice.
the whole process from creating the warp on a warp board to getting it all threaded through here, winding it on, tying it off, and doing the weaving. It'll be a lot of fun.
And there's a lot of work. We saw Lee in the beginning, or close to it, when he was starting and hooking up and teaching. You can go back and look at that last year, but they just moved this week, today
This
even.
morning. Yep.
Today to the Kircher building to make more room for them, and Lee now has room, and I actually like it. I know you're gonna, it's just the throwdown, but I can see
Right, sure.
I can see that he's got all kinds of,
I love it. Yeah, I moved over
We
here.
would-
It also, it gives me more light because I was sort of behind the door in the other room, and
it really opened up the other side, because that cabinet has been there since I was hosting in the 90s, so that hadn't been moved in 30 years.
yeah.
So it really, I'm like,
But now I actually have benches people can sit
Yeah.
at. I can play with stuff more.
Can
let
talk,
them play
yeah.
with drop spindles. We'll have.
it was funny. It was very odd to walk in there and then all that was gone. And then I'm like, huh. And I'm like, not a soul here? I did a quick recording around the tavern, which I hadn't done for a while, even though it's the exact same stuff. Some of it's the same stuff that had been there in the same spot since the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
keep
that's
an eye
okay.
on things, because with me moving out of there, we're hoping to have more space to do more taverny things. Like
Yeah.
host a meal.
Yeah, they're talking about that. They're looking at the silverware, which is made in Miamisburg,
Yeah.
to clean that up. So this is just a process, and what can you tell us what the items are called and what you're doing there?
Yes. So we just mentioned a minute ago the warp is the lengthwise. There's 20 yards on here. We've got less than a yard completed. And this fancy little device, very important because it tells me how wide and long to make each of my sections. So I'm currently working on white, and when I get to the end of that, I will switch back to brown because we're doing every other to match. And so these are the treadles, and they open up. You can see here, this is a shed. The shed is the space between two sets of warp that have been separated. Currently, if I look, I'm in the same shed as my last warp thread, so I'm going to pull that tight with the beater bar, which is also holds the reed, which separates everything. The width of the space between these, this is, I believe, either a 10 or 12 dent reed, which means 10 or 12 threads per inch going across it. So I've pulled this back tight. I'm going to drop the harnesses that contain those. So those two drop. I raise the opposite two. And that locks these pieces in and allows me to pass the next piece through. This is the shuttle holding a spool of the yarn. Pass that across, pull it back, and switch my harnesses again, and then I go back the other direction. And this is all I'm going to do over and over and over for another 19 and a half yards.
For a long time. I know the setup of just getting things ready was quite extensive.
Yep.
And
there's also another piece in here that has been a fascinating struggle. You can see right here there's a bunch of little pieces that are sticking up. I actually had a thread snap, and it was one of the main warp threads, so I'm going to pull that so it's nice and taut. The next time I beat this, it will sort of push that back in place. And there is a spool on the ground behind this, unlike the other ones that are all wrapped around the warp bar in the back.
I know he's had to fix many little things, and he,
Yep.
whatever happens, he gets the workaround.
Excellent. Yeah. And then also, I will show you right through here. I had ended the green thread right here, and I actually don't have it sticking out. Usually I do, and then started the white thread here going across. So when we're done with the whole project, I'll come through to all these little ends and snip them.
Did you see those fancy gold scissors? I did. They looked
Fancy.
nice. What impressed me the most? The fancy gold scissors. Got the, woo. I did like it.
Yep. But so eventually all of these, I'll either take a sharp knife and get it, or a scissors and
And you
snip.
just leave them there, just no reason to
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. No
Okay.
reason to deal with them until later.
Okay.
But there's always some overlap between the ends so that it's held in place and it won't start unfraying.
Okay. Good.
And also, sometimes what you would do is you would tie two colors together, but then you have a knot which makes a bump in the fabric. So we don't want knots, we'll just double what's in the channel.
And sometime in the future, when it's complete, it will be sold as either one thing or multiple things or whatever. Be on the lookout.
6 to 8 table runners, yes.
There you go. Seems like a year-long raffle is in order or something along.
That'd be a lot of fun, yeah.
Maybe one piece for bid, one piece for a raffle. Multiple different
Yeah.
approaches. Give the poor man a chance to, get lucky for a raffle
Show off
ticket.
a little, yeah.
There we go. And he's got all these sticks. You got to keep everything, certain tension, certain everything to keep it in order to keep it from binding up.
Yep. And the way I usually describe that is if I were to take this and start wrapping yarn around it, let's assume I can find the end of it. There we are. So if I've got 50 of these and I try to get them all just stacked the same way, they will never do that because they start rolling off of each other. You can't make a single column of thread.
Yes.
Which means eventually that's going to have a slightly different tension than however the next one was wound on there. And since we need consistent tension, we put the bars in every maybe 5 or 6 inches to make sure that it's winding up correctly.
Okay.
You wanted this?
Thank you. Can I have it? Thanks. And this
The young one.
is our young one.
The
Scott,
young one, yeah.
who just
Hello,
showed up
Dad.
in her fancy little outfit.
By the way, my shoes sparkle in the sun. Do you want to know why? We went shoe shopping.
Nice.
Of course, sparkles are good.
Very nice.
Sparkles are good.
Oh. Hi. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Are you fellow fiber junkies?
Well, fiber junkie one. We're more seamstresses than fiber junkies.
Okay.
I will clear out and let you all move to the
Thank
front
you.
section. I've already.
Oh, I like your color combination.
Isn't that fun?
Oh, that's pretty.
I actually meant for this to be a little more red,
Oh.
to do sort of a Christmassy thing, and it came out more of a brown.
Oh.
But yeah, it'll be a fun fun pattern, and we've got 20 yards loaded up on here.
20 yards.
So we should be done by maybe 2035. And,
Yeah.
and when we are, the Historic Society sponsored and bought the yarn. So all of this is theirs, and when we're done weaving it, we'll probably have 6 or 8 table runners or tablecloths, and we'll auction them off or do something.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Is it cotton or wool or?
This is wool. It was, I forget where we ordered it from, but we bought lots.
How long did it take to set it up?
So the warping, I think, took, well, putting it on the warping board to get the full length of the bundles with all the crossings that were, keep it in the right order, probably took 6 to 8 hours, and then
I would have thought
maybe
more than that.
another. Yeah, there's a nice board that makes that part easy.
Oh, okay.
And then actually getting it all threaded through this was maybe another 4 or 5 hours, and then winding the 20 yards on and keeping everything straight and undoing the daisy chains to let more yarn ready to go, and then maybe an hour or so to tie everything off on the front and get the tension all set up, and then we started weaving, and we've got,
So how much have you gotten done so far? Couple feet?
it looks like that is the beginning, so yeah, 2.5 feet maybe.
Okay.
So we got a ways to go, but yeah, all kinds of fun. This is the most important tool I have,
And what is that?
because this tells me how wide and
Oh.
long to make each of my
So
sections.
now you know how long to go with the off-white and,
Yep.
okay,
Yeah.
then start with the next one.
Yeah. So I got a few more rows, and then I'll switch to brown.
Is that just made out of a piece of wood?
Yeah. It's
Like
a little,
balsa wood or something?
Yep. A little chunk of something.
Very high tech.
Yeah.
That's why the little block is important.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because sometimes, you know, not everything is exactly evenly spaced, because you get a little bit different tension, it builds up differently, so in the end, I just want it to look right, not count right. And sometimes I forget and do an extra row or two, and really,
Are we gonna know? No.
makes it real.
Yeah, it's unique.
It does make it unique, that's
And
right.
Keeps it
makes
unique,
look like
yeah.
it wasn't done at a factory.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Computerized and all of that, yeah.
Right, yep. And actually, hanging up in the other building are a couple of tapestries that have a name in the corner.
We saw that, yeah. We
Did you
just
hear
came
what
from
they
the-
were made on? They were made on a jacquard loom.
Oh,
JAC.
wasn't that supposed to be like the precursor to the computer?
Yes.
Yeah.
In Conner
That was the
Prairie.
first,
I wove on one of those.
It
Did you?
actually
Yeah.
had cards about this big, and every single hole on it was one heddle on this. And so a card would be the configuration for a single row. And then you would take these cards and configure them to build an entire complex pattern, and the cards would all be stitched together end to end, and you'd have a chain of them, a couple hundred long,
I used to
depending on
write
how complex your pattern was.
all the alphabet.
And then we decided, wouldn't that be a great way
After
to
that one.
run calculations
All
on
the
the
way to
computer, so they went cards for that as well. Fancy
the
stuff.
only reason I knew that was because it was a.
That's how I started in the 70s. That's how I started in the 70s, programming computers with the cards.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
I had IBM punch cards in college, that's what we started on.
That's me. It was back in the
Shows my
70s.
age. Yep, back in the 70s.
So there's an incredible book that talks about the fabric of civilization, is the name of the book. And it goes through taking a different look at history than we usually do. We talk about the Stone Age and the Bronze Age, but nobody talks about the fact that you can't have stone tools without attaching the stone to the tool. And you needed string or some sort of fiber to do that. And so it should have been the string age.
Leather strips.
But they talk through all the crazy things that we did in how things were measured. And we see the numbers 12 and 60 a lot. Do you know why? You would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you've got a dozen on one hand, and now you would count back through, and you've got 2 dozen.
So now I've got 5 dozen, so I've got 60.
2 fingers is half a dozen, 1 finger is a quarter of a dozen. So you just get all of this
On your
adding up in
fingers.
math. Yeah.
You just blew my mind.
I never heard that.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
Yep. And there's a lot of things that specific accounting methods had to come about because we needed ways to track fabric and its trade across Europe and Asia. And so all of this history and a lot of the words that we use are all built around fabric and the words that they used with fabric. So much fun.
I'm glad I came today.
Such as, do you know what this device is with the green yarn on it?
It's a nitty nutty.
No,
No, the
I
nitty
have
nutty
one.
is a smaller.
I have one.
Yeah.
This is a
A
weasel.
yarn winder. A what?
A weasel.
A weasel?
And it's got a worm gear inside so that every so many times you wind it around, it hits a little board and goes clack. Pop Goes the Weasel was a kid's working song because to get kids to do this part of the household yarn chores,
So many times
we
around.
have a game round and round the mulberry bush. And what's important about mulberry bushes?
I don't know, my grandmother used to whip the back of my legs with her mulberry bush.
Fun!
Yes.
Mulberry is also the specific type of tree that silkworms grow in.
Oh.
And it's the only tree that they will grow in.
Unfortunately, they brought the wrong ones over here.
Right, yeah, they did. Yep.
Learned that from Dana today.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. See how it's all tied?
And the process of silk production is just absolutely incredible. And in that same book I mentioned, Louis Pasteur, before he went and did all the other stuff, they had brought him in to the East to try to figure out why entire batches of silkworms were dying. And it turns out his initial bit of study towards all of the other stuff was related to learning that there was a tiny little microscopic thing, like a fungus or a parasite, that was killing the silkworms. So they found if a specific steaming process was done with a lot of the tools, you decreased cross-contamination and saved
Dad
entire
set him on his
batches.
path.
Like Lister, Lister
Mhm.
worked off a lot of stuff that he did too.
Nice.
To get the, we need to clean our tools before we cut somebody's arm off.
Right. It's important.
It is very important, yeah.
There's a fun museum on the north end of downtown Chicago that's like the surgery museum. And they have an actual little hand crank chainsaw that was used for cutting bones. It's just, history is so much fun.
It is.
Like, you did what?
I've seen them.
Well, we volunteer at Heritage Village Museum in Cincinnati.
Oh, nice.
And we have a doctor's office, and it's got the saw for amputation and all,
Right,
the
yeah.
traveling tool kit.
Yeah.
That
Fun,
he had,
fun.
because he was a brigadier surgeon by the time he mustered out of the Civil War, and he was with Sherman in the march through Atlanta and out to
Interesting.
Savannah, and he had this toolkit.
Cut them down. Did they have the 4 people to hold the person down while they were cutting it? I mean,
Bite on this stick, we'll pour bourbon down your throat. Actually, they had ether, and if they could get a hold of it out in the field, they had ether, and what was the other thing they had? Something else that they had.
okay, we just wrapped up with Lee and some more information and learning more about the loom and some other interesting tidbits and facts. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up this video. Appreciate everybody watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more like from around town or around Miamisburg and around the area and events and fun stuff, music, feel free to subscribe. You can also like, comment, share, and hope to see you for the next video. You have a great one. What's that used for?
The one that made that.
I mean, you broke out a toy. I had my camera put in my pocket. I was just listening,
Sure you did.
and then what she do? She
I
opens
don't
up a
believe
little
that.
surprise.
I have all kinds of toys. So this is called a paddle loom, and they were common in the 18th century. And it's just a heddle. If you've looked at the looms that he has over there, we've talked in the past about weaving when you learn in 3rd grade and how it's all over, under, over, under, over, under. And when you're a 3rd grader, you think it must take forever to make fabric if you have to do that. But then you find out that no, somebody a long time ago, like Vikings, like way back, not new, figured out that you could use a heddle and you could put every other string in your warp through a hole, and then every other one gets to go free in the lines. And that way, when you go like this, every other one goes up, and when you go this, every other one goes down. And so now you've made the shed that you can go through. And you can see all that in operation on the big loom.
Which we did.
This, to make, no, this is only this wide, it'll just make tape. It'll make strips of tape. It won't make big long fabrics. You can make decoration. You can use it for anything you need a twill tape for. You can make something like this.
It's a lot easier to carry around than his big floor loom.
Yes, but the big floor loom will make your big wide fabric, and this won't. I can't make clothing on this. That would take a long time. Because I could, no. You were really skinny, maybe? I don't know, no. And one thing I like about this is something common that 18th century ladies could have. You can have a whole box loom. You can have the whole thing. But really, it's just this one piece is the main thing. And they're curved like this so you can hold them on your knees and use your hands. And then your warp just gets tied to, I don't know, the pole, the window, whatever, to give you tension. And the other half is maybe clipped in your apron string or something to give you some tension. And now you're very, small scale. You can wait tape.
Okay, thanks.
We'll go back to the airfield.
What have you brought now,
Oh.
Dana? Dana, what have you brought
I can
now?
make it go back. I'm not demoing this yet, but it's an 18th.
You don't have to demo, but just what is it?
It's an 18th century. It's a reproduction of an 18th century box loom, and I talked about how the heddle works with the other one.
Yeah, and now we're
So
seeing
this is a heddle. See, it's all. As a matter of fact, it comes out, and like I said before, it has the slots and the holes, and just like Lee has over there, you have a warp, and the weft goes back and forth. But this is only going to make narrow things like that.
Like a bookmark. Or garters.
Yeah, like tape. You can use it for trim, but you can also use it for like the ties of your petticoats. You always need tape for that. And this is fluffy and big because it's a sample one with yarn. Mm-hmm. But you would really use it with the finer stuff that I put away already. So I can't find it.
Couldn't you make garters out of with it?
You could, and the fluffy yarn ones.
There.
Oh yeah, that's what I was looking for. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So if you made it out of something finer, you're gonna make something that's really good for making twill tape and stuff like that. So, and you can make designs and you can do cards, all kinds of stuff. It's not much different than using a paddle loom, like the little one that I had, or there's a bigger one. So same thing. It's a heddle. You have the holes, you have the lines. The only difference is this list, and they had little cute ones. So like you could sit in the parlor in the evening and work on it and make tape.
Look at that.
Very cool. Oh.
She says it's a reproduction, but I think it's real to keep the thieves away. May or may not be true.
I thought I better take this out of the car before we do a run for anything. This is a second-hand one from someone in
From the 1800s.
Pennsylvania.